Hello everyone, thanks so much for joining me this lunchtime for our webinar on creating the ultimate candidate experience. It's a lovely day outside here in Sydney. I hope it's just as nice wherever you are at the moment. Yep, that's me, looking a little bit red, but altogether looking pretty happy and pretty pleased with myself. My name is Lewis Matthews. I'm the Senior Account Executive here at Xref. We're a software platform that helps recruitment teams save costs by automating reference checks. In our most recent recruitment risk index, we discovered that over 40% of candidates are being lost in the pre-onboarding phase, whether this be application, interview, ref check, or offer. So this got us thinking, what can organizations be doing to improve their candidate experience and hopefully retain more of this talent through to offer stage? Candidate experience is the connection you and your company have with an applicant as they embark on their journey through the interview, offer, and onboarding process. It's really important that we make the most of this and try and separate ourselves from the competition, as candidates these days are juggling multiple opportunities. You're giving the candidate a window to the company, and it's up to you to decide what they see and how they see it. I can't help but draw constant parallels between candidate experience and customer experience. Here at Xref, we know that referrals and introductions from happy customers is the best way to generate new business. Your recruitment process should be seen in exactly the same way. Candidates, whether you place them or not, are your customers, and servicing them needs to be considered top of the priority list. Over the next 30 minutes, we're going to go on a bit of a journey. Firstly, we're going to look at how to effectively communicate with candidates at key touch points during the hiring lifecycle. We're then going to discuss the importance of investing in good recruitment technology to accelerate and streamline this process. And finally, we'll bring these two factors, couple them together and see how that can impact your employer brand and what this means for your business and the potential return on investment. We're running a few polls during the session as well, so I'd love you to pop down your lunch at that point and get involved where possible. We've also allocated a bit of time at the end for questions, so if anything does come to mind as I waffle on, please just add to the questions section of the control panel, and we'll get to it then. So why should we be focusing on candidate experience at all? So the Talent Board, which runs the Candidate Experience Awards in the US, did a survey of 45,000 job applicants about their experience. Of those who had a positive experience, 61% said they would actively encourage colleagues to apply to the organization, and 40% of those positives said they would actually buy more goods or services from the company, even if they ultimately weren't hired. And on the flip side, 27% of those who reported a negative experience would actively discourage colleagues from applying, and 30% would buy less goods or services. That's some pretty startling percentages, and it really hits home how important this can ultimately be, not just for the recruitment team and your recruitment process, but for the business in general. It actually can contribute to the bottom line. So I quickly want to jump into our first poll. I want everyone to kind of take off your recruiter and HR hats for a second, and remember when you've been a candidate in the past. Maybe this might be the most recent time, or just historically. What have you found to be the most frustrating part of the recruitment process as a candidate? Is it the lack of communication, so not knowing where you stand or what stage of the application is at and not getting that back with people? Is it clunky technology, for example, outdated recruitment platforms which make it difficult to apply? Is it delays in reference checks? Let's see who the Xref customers are out there. Is it offer management? Was this professional and transparent during that process? Did you know everything about the offer, and did you have a chance to negotiate? So we'll just give it a second before that comes in. Okay, fantastic. So 83% of people listening are saying it's that lack of communication that is really the biggest pain point and the biggest frustration for candidates. That's really good because that brings us into our next slide. So the candidate journey is filled with many touch points that impact the overall experience. It's important that communication throughout the journey is frequent, relevant, and transparent. As we've just seen, one of the biggest gripes during the candidate journey is lack of communication. One of the biggest things that I've learned through my career so far in not only recruitment and sales, but perhaps more critically from my girlfriend, thanks Nicole, is to actively set and manage expectations at all times. This can cause huge frustrations for candidate if managed poorly. On the flip side, if you give candidate realistic timeframes that they can expect to hear back from you, you'll experience, firstly, less back and forth and less interruption to your day, but you'll also experience less anxiety from that candidate because they know what to expect and when to expect it. Here are the main touch points we've identified during the candidate journey where you should be communicating effectively. After they've applied, so confirming the application has been received. Even if you get thousands of applications, a nice, well-crafted auto-response confirming the application is really, really important. It doesn't take a lot of time to set up, but it's a great way of keeping that communication alive. We've got a great example in a moment from Airbnb in an upcoming slide. Confirming their interview, the day and the time is obviously really important, but also who they'll be meeting. You're ideally not going to be interviewing hundreds of people for every role. So from interview onwards, these people are being invited into the office, into the home of the company. They need to be treated as VIPs from the moment you decide you want to interview them. The interview itself, try and personalize as much as possible. Perhaps invite stakeholders in to give that candidate a real snapshot of who's in the business and what the culture's like. Show them around the office. Why not give them a tour and really make them feel at home and as comfortable as possible coming into that interview. In my last webinar, I mentioned that we often encourage our clients to use references earlier in the recruitment process. Now, one of the big advantages of this is to use those results to structure the way future interviews are set up, as well as onboarding those candidates in the most effective way. This can really make somebody feel invested in and listened to when you tailor the interview and the onboarding process to their potential weaknesses or development points. A great example of candidate experience in the interview process is LinkedIn. For example, they provide a welcome pack for their candidates on interview day. Now, this might not be feasible for everyone listening, but it's a great example of going the extra mile. At the end of the day, you want to impress a candidate as much as you hope they're going to impress you. With senior and more niche roles, this becomes even more imperative, as a bad experience can leave a negative effect. And when those people are networking at a meetup or drinks or even a golf day, you could be getting bad press without even knowing it. After the interview, you need to thank that candidate firstly for coming in. Detail the next steps and the best point of contact. Again, set those expectations well. We have a great template that we use here that I'll share with you all in a moment. And then decision time. We need to provide that person with the feedback if they weren't successful. It's really, really important. A lot of times feedback takes the role has changed or has been filled or thanks but no thanks, and it's really not okay. Even if that candidate was wildly different than what you expected, they still gave you the time to come in and interview. You need to explain what you like or dislike about the application, and try and give them as much constructive feedback about their interview, about the application, and give them a real reason that they weren't successful. If it was a close call, let them know that you'd like to keep them in mind for future opportunities and stay in touch. I think that's a great way of giving them a good experience at the time. So when we're reviewing communication throughout the candidate journey, consider the I just went too far. Consider these questions coming up in a moment. Is your tone appropriate? Are you conveying your brand personality through your communication? Perhaps ask your marketing department to cast their eyes over your communication templates and see what they think. Are you in touch frequently and soon enough? I think that's quite self-explanatory, and we kind of touched on that a moment ago. And are you sharing relevant content? Is there an opportunity here for you to perhaps promote new initiatives or product releases? Any example of company culture or charity days or anything like that? In line with this theme of transparency, a really simple and effective way to improve communication with candidates is to beef up those autoresponders. Most of them are generic and boring, but it's a really easy way to add a lot of value by including relevant information through that process. On screen here is an example from Airbnb. This is a snippet of what they include in those initial autoresponders after application. As you can see, they've got a FAQ section. It's obviously some key questions they get asked a lot, and it also helps set those expectations. If you look at the question in the bottom left, they're letting you know when you'll hear back. At the bottom right, they're telling you what the interview process looks like. It's a really easy way to stand out from the crowd, whilst also saving your team time on responding to these sorts of requests individually through the process. Here's the example that we use Xref after an interview. We thank people for coming in, outline who their best point of contact is moving forward, and set realistic timeframes when they can expect feedback from us. We also ask them for feedback. It's a really important part for us internally and helps with our continuous improvement as we grow as an organization. If you like this template and want a copy, please feel free to pop your email in our questions section, and I'll make sure that's all sent over to you. And now that we've touched on communication and then it's emails and autoresponders, let's dive a little bit deeper into HR technology. As mentioned, 40% of people are abandoning the application due to delays in the hiring process. I think we all know, and it's no secret, that the competition for talent is one of the biggest pain points in recruitment. So in order to give your company a competitive advantage, we need to make sure we start by giving the candidates the best first impression possible. It is really up to you how candidates perceive the business in these early stages. And by investing in good technology, not only are you ensuring that all candidates who want to apply can do so easily, you're also reinforcing that perception that the company is tech-savvy, innovative, and willing to invest. A study from the US job site Snag a Job found that 82% of job seekers are now searching for jobs from their mobile phone. I'm sure this isn't surprising, and there's probably 100 statistics similar to this. And when you look at the likes of how Seek and LinkedIn have optimized their mobile applications to aid the candidate experience and the ease of application, it's really no surprise at all. I could literally jump onto my phone right now and apply to 5 or 10 really well-suited jobs in a matter of seconds. This rise in mobile use is something we've experienced ourselves here at Xref. Due to a huge increase in candidates and referees using our platform on a mobile device, we have to adapt and redesign the whole platform to optimize this experience. As people are applying on the go more and more, you could really be losing a huge amount of potential talent by not having a mobile-friendly application platform. And this can apply further, not just to that application, but all communications and interactions for a candidate should really be trying to get as mobile as possible. As well as looking at the ease of use of your applicant tracking system and internal careers page, there are plenty of excellent external tools out there which can add significant value and streamline almost every aspect of this journey. Other technology tools out there which can be used to optimize this, the likes of video interviewing softwares, onboarding packages, video job advertisements, calendar schedules, of course, automated referencing, and countless others that can aid in this process. And it also gives your teams more time to make sure that every candidate is serviced in the right way, and to search and source for the best talent out there. I'd really advise you to have a little look into sort of what sort of technologies are out there and how this might fit into your process. And a good example is some of our team have been using a system called Calendly. And what that allows you to do is schedule blocks of hiring managers' time automatically. So, for example, they said, I'm free Tuesday morning for 4 hours to conduct interviews. Candidates can use the app to directly block out time in a hiring manager's diary so that you don't have to worry about going back and forth between both parties arranging all these interviews. So far, we've kind of covered how effective communication with a bit of technology can really improve your candidate experience. We're going to see how all this affects your employer brand and what you can do to really leverage it. In addition to Offer and Beyond, candidates and employees, both past and present, can now tell the whole world about their experience with the organization online. At the same time, with job seekers' need for a more honest and transparent look at your organization, it's fueled the rise of employee review websites like Glassdoor. And as you can see on the screen, 88% of people trust online reviews as much as a personal recommendation. That's a really, really powerful statistic and something we should really try and leverage as much as possible. The rise of Glassdoor in particular has been quite phenomenal. If you're not familiar, it's the fastest growing job site in the world now. Over 11 million employee reviews for 500,000 companies. You can think of it kind of as the TripAdvisor for employers. Allows candidates and employees, past and present, to leave reviews regarding their experience with the organization. And for you as an employer, it should be seen as a fundamental tool, and one that's increasingly crucial to help building that strong employer brand. We've seen Glassdoor really skyrocket in the US and the UK. And it's only a matter of time before that's replicated even more here in Australia. So saying that, I just want to see from the audience here, how active are you on your company Glassdoor page? I'm going to give 4 options, and if you could just kind of pick what really best suits you. Never heard of it, don't manage at all, sometimes check, or are actively managing. Okay, excellent. So we've got a bit of response over a few different. Quite a few people have never heard of it. Almost half don't manage. Some sometimes check, and a very, very small proportion of people online actively manage it. It's kind of as I thought, and I think Glassdoor is something that really is in its infancy here in Australia, but doesn't have to be. We can really use to leverage that. If we look at an example that's about to pop up on the screen in a second, what we've done so far through the webinar is focus on the applications offer stage, but there's a huge amount we can be doing before anyone even presses the apply button. If we can see on screen now, we're going to look at an example of Unilever and their Glassdoor page. As you can see, they've completely kitted it out, turning their page essentially into an extension of their website careers page. They've got jobs there on the right, they've got integrations with all their social media channels, they've a completed About Us section, and as we move down the page, you can see where the employees, past and present, can leave reviews of the company. As we move right down to the bottom, you'll see in a second, it's a section where candidates, whether they've accepted offers or not, can leave a detailed review of their interview experience with the company. It's really, really powerful. If we can actively manage this and build up the reviews here, it can be a great tool to show candidates in the application process all about this and show the transparency in the business. So when it comes to managing employer brands, transparency really does breed trust. The value of transparency in today's market is definitely not to be underestimated. I think it's a standard that we should all try and aim for wherever possible. It's really important for your team to be engaging with these reviews as they come in with a personalized response, highlighting what the employee said and expanding on anything as required. If a review highlights a specific question or issue, suggest a response, a way to deal with it, and definitely pass that information on to the relevant business function, as this shows a great culture of continuous improvement to the outside world. In order to increase this presence on the likes of Glassdoor, make sure you ask candidates to leave reviews, especially if employees leave on good terms. Ask them to write a review on Glassdoor. They're going to ask you for a reference. We know that. So ask them to return the favor. Over time, you can start building up a library of reviews, integrate this with your careers page, and start guiding applicants to this in the first instance so they can get a more holistic view of the company as a whole. We showed you earlier the example from Xref and how we emailed the autoresponder after interviews. Why not issue surveys to interview candidates to see what they liked or disliked during this process? It won't only be beneficial to you and the team with that continuous improvement in mind, but it will leave the candidate feeling really, really important and empowered, and showing again that the company is dedicated to that improvement culture. It's a great perception to have whether they get the job or not. So what we've covered today is how and what to communicate to candidates through the journey, leveraging technology to accelerate processes, and then how to effectively manage that employer brand piece. So the initial reason for this webinar was to try and improve the candidate experience so that we can reduce dropout during the hiring process, reduce time expended by recruiters, and benefit from a higher volume and a better quality of referrals and therefore hires into the business. A transparent and informative hiring process complete with third-party referrals will mean you are less likely to see candidates drop out of the hiring process, because they're better informed on what the job's going to look like on day one and what the hiring process entails. At Xref, we know how important candidate references are. This is the only point of a hiring process where you're getting third-party validation on that candidate. It's exactly the same with these online reviews. The difference is that you can share reviews with the world to help promote your business and improve the employer brand as a whole. Referrals and review platforms like Glassdoor will give your candidates an unbiased look at the company so that they can come to a more informed decision as they go through the process. A few key action items. This first one I really, really like. It's enlist a covert candidate. Now, what I mean by that is, whether it be yourself, a member of the team, someone in another department, a friend, a family member, relative, whatever it is, get them to act as a candidate for the business. You can see if the platform is mobile friendly, how easy it is for them to actually apply and get their application to you. You can see what the autoresponders look like. Are you actually adding any value with that autoresponder? Are you setting expectations correctly? We want to make sure that when candidates come in, they're really, really excited for that interview and are as comfortable as possible as well. It's a really stressful time, and we want them to be at their best when they're interviewing for you. Encourage candidate feedback in your hiring process. Again, I think this constant feedback can not only encourage continuous improvement of your processes, but it can lead to a fantastic perception from candidates and really make you stand out from the competition. And lastly, as a bit of a interest more, have a look at your own company Glassdoor profile, especially the Australian one. Update any company info, respond to any outstanding reviews, and really start to make a bit of use from Glassdoor. So that really wraps up my side of the webinar. Would be really interested if anyone's got any questions of what's happened so far. Yeah, we'll take a bit of time now to run through anything. Okay, so we just got one come in here. Surely some reviews can be bad for business. Yeah, this is a great question, and it's something that I wondered myself, obviously, for quite a while. And so I read a stat saying that 68% of people trust reviews more when they see both good and bad. Now, you're bound to get a few reviews aren't complimentary, but as long as people can see that you're taking on board what they're saying and actually use this as feedback to improve the process, and people really respect and appreciate this. You're never going to get glowing reviews for everything. If it is, it's just a bit suspect, really. Nothing's ever completely rosy and perfect. So we've just had another one in. In my experience, what's the best technologies to use at each stage of the recruitment process? Now, at Xref, we're not technically affiliated with that many partners, but there's a huge amount of technologies out there that can be used. If you just go in and search, for example, video pre-screening or video interviewing, there'll be a number of fantastic organizations, and we see them all the time. A lot of companies use us alongside video interviewing or particular onboarding tools to help with that streamlined approach to getting a candidate into the business. Obviously, from a referencing perspective, I'm a little bit biased, but I think again, there's lots of different technologies that you can use to onboard somebody. If you want any further information, please drop me an email, and I can try and introduce you to anybody else in the industry. Okay, so here's one. There's no reviews on Glassdoor for my company. Would you suggest encouraging employees to review? Yeah, I think absolutely. I think, I was saying that Glassdoor skyrocketed in the UK and the US, but hasn't quite got there here in Australia. The reason for it is we need people to review. In Glassdoor is like a LinkedIn or a Facebook. It's a fantastic tool for us to promote the business. So yeah, I think absolutely, why not send around an email saying that you're trying to promote employer brand internally, and ask people to put in reviews on Glassdoor. Then you can start directing candidates there. So when they've applied, you can send an autoresponder with the FAQs and a link to the video, and also a link to the Glassdoor page, and say, look, have a look at our unbiased reviews from candidates or employees past and present. I think that's a really, really important point. Another question here is how best to manage negative reviews, respond to them or ignore them. I think definitely respond to them, 100%. I think you need to show people that you're trying to address any issues that are raised. Someone might have a comment that's actually really you didn't know about, or you weren't that aware of, that's easily addressable. I think showing that to the world that you can, you're commenting and actioning it is really, really powerful. And it shows not only that candidates themselves might then flip their perception, and if we journey back to the stats on people buying or using more of your goods, you can change your perception of an individual candidate and therefore turning them into an advocate simply by addressing their issue. We've got another one here about personality tests. How do you feel about personality tests and profiling as a tool to sort genuine people from others? To be honest, I don't know too much about personality tests. A lot of our clients don't, and not that I know of, use this kind. I know there are psychometric tests that a lot of people use, which I think can be quite effective. Again, to be honest, it's not really my area of expertise, and I don't know too much about it. Okay, so we've got another one here. In your experience with your clients, what do they say is the biggest pain point in the process? I think the poll we had earlier was pretty much on the money in terms of the whole communication piece. But a lot of internal recruiters and HR teams that we liaise with say that time and time again, it's having that constant stream of good talent to interview and engage with. I think if we can develop this mantra of employee brand, reviews and referrals that we can get from candidates, it will ensure that we're getting more quality through to this stage. And hopefully if we can expand our employee brand and attract people through referrals and reviews, it will reduce our reliance on job ads that I think everyone kind of doesn't really like how much we are nowadays relied on job ads for sourcing. And let's be honest, sourcing through candidate applications on job ad websites is one of the most time-consuming parts of resourcing. So we can turn this around, and much like the good agency recruiters in the world, have a talent pool coming to us from referrals and reviews. Yeah, I think that's about it. Okay, so guys, that pretty much brings us to the 30 minutes. As we've had a constant theme of transparency throughout this webinar, I'd love to get your feedback on how we've done, what you liked or disliked about it, and how was the content, any areas that we think we can improve. And also from a personal perspective, I'd love any comments on my delivery, anything that you think, from a personal development standpoint, I could improve on my webinar. Any feedback is really welcome. My email is there at the bottom if you'd like to contact me directly. What we'll be doing now, the next step is everyone who's logged in will send a recording of this webinar, so you can replay it, you can share it with the team if you think it was interesting. But no, thanks so much for tuning in, and yeah, really look forward to receiving feedback and any further questions. We'd love to help any way I can. We'll be online answering questions for another couple of minutes if anyone does want to hang on. Otherwise, we'll try and get to any further questions as and when. And again, you've got my email if you'd like to ask me anything else. Thank you very much, everyone. Bye.